Good morning. Today we will be talking about a biomechanical analysis on the effect of various modified exercises on the velocity of a softball swing. So before anything else, we'd like to introduce to you the sport and what this paper is mainly about. So softball is a game that requires both offensive and defensive game strategies. The team relies heavily on the offensive skills of the player because it can either win or lose the game. In batting, it is having the explosive strength to overpower the speed of the ball when it comes in contact with the bat. However, research says that sport-specific training is encouraged for the athletes because it will allow a more positive transfer for the athletes when they are in game situation. The study will be conducted to the UP Softball Varsity team who are currently in their postseason. It is important to state what season they're in because this will have an effect on whether or not the modified exercises or the active rest will actually have an effect on the velocity of the bat. Because according to research, it is encouraged that the athletes continue or to have active rest after their season or after the competitive season to have a maintenance of their muscle power. So now moving on to the methodology. The participants are from the UP Softball Varsity team, specifically 10 players who will be divided into the control group and the experimental group. The experimental group will be doing interventions for 2 weeks for twice a day. This method will be done in 3 different ways which will be discussed by Ate Kacha.
So yun, yung unang method, Kinovea. Ito yung setup na pinaglagyan kung saan nakatayo yung player at kung saan sila magbabat. Yung Kinovea, ito yung ginamit namin upang ma-measure yung glenohumeral joint ng isang batter. Method 2, speed radar gun, kung saan na-measure yung velocity ng bat kapag na-contact niya na yung bat sa bola. So yung ginamit namin ay batting tee para hindi gumagalaw yung bola at pag na-contact niya ng maayos yung ball, yung speed ng bat yung makuha or ma-measure. Method 3 is tracker. Isa lang din siyang app tulad ng Kinovea pero ang nami-measure naman niya ay velocity din. So yan, yung example ulit ng picture kung saan namin na-set up, kung saan tatayo yung bat.
And it will be done with the pitching machine to allow a more in-game context. So parang ito yung totoong bat speed nila if ever they were in a game.
Kasi iba-iba yung bola na darating sa'yo pag galing sa pitching machine. So, nakaka-apekto din yun kung paano ka mag-swing.
Yeah, but then in our methods, we take into consideration na we'll only consider 3 successful hits. A successful hit will be defined na the bat and the ball were able to make good contact and the ball was hit inside the playing field.
So, yun, ito yung example ng ginamit namin yung tracker sa pag-measure. Ito yung example ng picture.
And now for the interventions. We will move on to present to you the results. So we'll just flash through the pictures so you can see. This is the results of the pretest from Kinovea, which in the parenthesis is the value of the differences. When it's positive, it means it got bigger. When it is negative, it means it got smaller. And the standard deviation is the standard deviation of the differences of the glenohumeral joint. The speed radar gun results of the control group's pretest, wherein we also got the average of the 3 successful trials of each participant. This is also the tracker results, which was converted from miles per second or meters per second to kilometers per hour. And this is the experimental group, same. Speed radar gun, tracker, post-test, experimental group. So now we will be moving on to the discussion. First, we will be talking about the important findings from the data. This table shows a summary of differences for the control group to allow an easier representation of the data. This is the method 1, which shows the standard deviation of the values of the abduction of the glenohumeral joint. This table shows a summary of the differences for the experimental group to allow an easier representation of the data. And this is the experimental group standard deviation for the Kinovea glenohumeral joint values. In this table, from the interventions, you can see that there is no significant change in the velocity of the speed. However, what differs from the control group and the experimental group is that the experimental group was able to maintain their velocity of the swing. It is clearly seen in method 3 that there was a maintenance or at least a negligible 1 kilometer decrease in their velocity of the speed. As compared to the control group who had not done any interventions, they have decreased in their velocity of the speed. When it comes to the correlation of the angle of the glenohumeral joint to the speed, it was evident that the data gathered for this section or for this method was too widespread. And it can almost be insignificant in a sense that there may be too many outliers for it to have a significant effect on the study. As you can see, in the control group, the outlying value was 24.64 standard deviation, meaning the differences of the adduction or abduction angle can reach up to plus 24 or minus 24 in value. While for the experimental group, the outlying value is 21, which can state that it may or may not have a significant effect on the study. First, we'd like to point out that in the tracker, it was seen that all the graphs have a uniform behavior, wherein the peak of the graph, or where the highest point of the bat swing is when the bat is in contact with the ball, or when it is in the bat acceleration phase. This picture you see is one of the setup of the tracker experiment, and this is the point of contact of the ball and the bat, which shows through a graph that it is at the highest peak. For example, this is how the videos were taken, and this is the graph that came out of this video. As you can see in the last picture, this is the bat acceleration phase, and it is at the highest peak of the graph. We will be discussing from this study the many factors that affect the velocity and will explain how each factor contributes to the speed of the bat. The interventions mainly focus on the strengthening of the upper extremities, specifically the wrist. So now, Ate Kacha will be talking about another factor that determines the speed of the swing.
So yun, dito sa Kinovea na ginamit namin, may kita na from loading phase to stride phase, nagbago yung glenohumeral joint angle na simula dito papunta dito sa phase na to. Tapos napagalaman din namin na hindi nakaka-apekto yun dahil depende sa tao kung anong mas gusto nilang form, kung mas malayo ba or mas malapit. Kasi nakita namin na ang speed or velocity ng bat ay nakaka-apekto kapag nag-contact na yung bat sa ball. So hindi nakaka-apekto yung angle ng glenohumeral joint sa bilis ng bat or velocity.
There was actually one study that stated that the abduction of the shoulder should be greater so that it can produce a more powerful swing. The other sources also stated that it is more important that the flick of the wrist or the upper extremities, like the forearm of the right and the left, is stronger, and it would be more determinant of the speed instead of just the abduction of the shoulder. This shows the difference from the loading phase to the stride phase. So as mentioned nga a while ago, that despite the more abducted shoulder rather than the less abducted shoulder, it does not significantly or it does not directly affect this velocity of the bat, because it is more important that the muscles concerned, like the pronators of the forearm, are the ones that are involved. The abduction and adduction factor of the glenohumeral joint affects the velocity of the bat upon striking the ball and is different per individual. It affects in a sense that it is different per individual, but it is not necessarily a general idea that the abduction of the factor should be greater than or should be less than at the start of the loading phase. Another factor that affects the velocity of the swing of the bat is the flexion and extension of the elbow. As you can see in the different phases, this is the drive phase, wherein the right elbow is actually more flexed than the left, which is extended. In the drive phase, this is where the forearms are supinated, wherein the position is in a way that these pronators, these muscles as seen in the screen, are the ones that are contracting in this wrist as well. So when it's in the drive phase, the muscles are actually contracting, and they are more important than the adduction of the angle. So this position is that it is supinated. When it comes in contact with the ball, the flick of the wrist is important because the contracting of the arm and the lengthening of it will add momentum and power to the swing. After the bat has been in contact with the ball, the follow-through is when the supination of the arm, or the pronation of the arm rather, will come into play, which will allow the conclusion of the whole movement itself. So in short, what the long paragraph was trying to say is that the supination and the pronation of the forearm, it's actually also one of the determinants because of the movement of the flick of the wrist. So in the end, the arm is supinated, and the elbow is flexed. And then, when you go deeper into the phase of the movement, your arm is extended, and so for both arms it's extended, and the flick of the wrist, the muscle of the wrist is important for when it comes in contact with the ball. It will stop, it will go against and break the inertia of the ball to push the ball back rather than the bat being pushed by the ball. So in short, it is important that the wrist is powerful because it will stop the inertia. It will prevent the bat from recoiling instead of the ball recoiling the bat. Okay, so the main purpose of the flicking of the wrist is to break the inertia coming from the ball to avoid the bat coming to a complete stop upon contact. As you can see in this picture is the extension flexion of the elbows, which is important because it adds momentum and power to the swing when the wrist is able to push the ball away from the bat. So in the end, we'd like to conclude that this study mainly talks about how the modified exercises during postseason actually has an effect on the velocity of the swing in a sense that it maintains the muscle power and actually takes into consideration also the other factors that should be developed, not just the upper extremities. Like, our study focused on the upper extremities only to see if the modified exercises, which mainly focused on the wrist, would be of big improvement. So as a take-home message, we'd like to encourage that the UP softball team during postseason would maintain health, like through small exercises, even if it's just the modified exercises that we gave.